Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to another live stream here on Proko during our Black Friday sale. Today we're joined by fantastic watercolor artist Liron. You guys have seen Liron on the channel before in a couple different ways. We recently did a live stream with Liron where we were playing a video and he was commenting on something, but we wanted to give you guys the actual process so you can see what he's getting up to. So Liron's joining us here again today. If you guys are interested, Liron does have a course on Proko right now that you guys can pick up. You can get that at the link in the description or at this link right here on screen right now. If you guys are interested, you like anything that you see here today, follow Liron on socials. He's fantastic. He's been posting a bunch of different kind of like short form videos. So if you can't get a full course and you don't have time for a 30-minute YouTube video, Liron's got you over on Instagram and everywhere else. I'm Steven. I will be kind of combing through the chat for you guys to take any of your questions and deliver them to Liron, though he'll also be in there to see all of your guys' quippy information that you put in there. Liron, how's it going today?
It's going well. It's been a long, fun day. And thank you so much for having me again, by the way.
Dude, no problem. It was great last time.
Yeah, I had a good time. I'm happy to be able to provide the promised demo. Yeah, and definitely check out, especially I know there are some people here maybe from my channel and people that have been familiar with my work. Check out the courses because, again, this is the best price you'll get for them. If you buy directly from me, right now it's going to be more expensive. So head over to Proko, check it out, proko.com. You want to check it out. It's your opportunity.
Yeah. It's the opportunity of a lifetime, guys. Get it.
Yes.
So what is it we're going to be showing today?
Yeah, so I have two actually Bargue plates that I want to show you kind of the process of. Going to be very casual painting process. That's how I like to paint when I'm just trying to have fun and get a result I enjoy and I like. So we have this back study and we have this portrait study. I actually used to remember who that is. Now I don't, so my apologies. I think it's written. It might be written here, but yeah. There's a lot of fun things going on here, especially when it comes to edges. So that's something that I'll probably put quite a lot of emphasis on, creating interesting edges in watercolor. I think it's one of the medium's kind of superpowers, I would say. And I'm going to show you how that works.
Okay, I'm looking forward to it. And for any of you guys in the chat, if you guys are experienced watercolor artists or a person who's never used watercolor or anything before, ask your questions. Liron's here to answer them.
Yes, yes, I am. So yeah, we can get started, right? We'll just get to it. So, with watercolor, when I look at this thing here, there are a lot of interesting things. I like to kind of set colors aside every once in a while and focus on more monochromatic work. Or maybe like I'll use two different colors, warm and cool, just for fun. In this particular case, we'll probably try and play off of the, again, warm and cool temperatures and a lot of edges. I actually have my water bucket here. I'm going to move it outside of the frame because the reflections from the light are a little annoying. That's something I'm familiar with. And then we have some just paper towels to help us control the level of wetness in our brush. Now, I do want to show real quick, and I mentioned this before, watercolor is water. That's the main medium that you're going to use. And because of that, the water is what drives the painting. So if I go ahead and kind of put in this paint here, you can see this is just almost clean water, and you can see there's a sheen here. What this is going to do is help the paint move. I don't have to work at all. Once I put the paint in, you see it's moving, right? It's doing the work for me. That's the kind of superpower of watercolor painting. You can control a lot of what's happening by actually removing your control. It's a very Zen concept. You can get a lot done just by helping the paint move itself. And so that's how you'll get very simple kind of three-dimensional shapes you can create. If I just blend an edge here. I can, in advance, then I can just define a kind of core shadow or a shadow very easily and start kind of working on it while it's still wet. It's very simple to do. It's one of those things that people do have a hard time with when they're just starting out, but let me kind of reassure you, it's quite a simple thing to do once you kind of understand how water and paint behave, right? So I put some water, it's going to push the paint back. If I want to darken, sorry, that's our dog. Maybe you can hear her. I'm going to do wet. It's going to, move the paint here. And then whatever. This could be like an apple or something like that, and you get to very easily define little shapes, and you can have a lot of fun with it. So we're kind of going to do the same thing here, and I am going to start by defining where I want a smooth transition. And as you can see here in the reference, it's not the most important thing for the reference photo, but just to show you. So this here looks like a very soft edge, so I can just start to pour some water into the paper. The way you place things on paper with the brush doesn't really matter. It's more about finding what works for you. But I'm kind of just wetting this area, and then I can kind of come back with this mix that I'm going to decide on very randomly. I have some yellows, I have some, and I never really know what the mix is I'm going to use. It's very hard to say, okay, I'm using 20% this color, 30% this color, and it doesn't matter to me.
Yeah.
I like the organic feel of colors being, very unified in a way. That's why, in my opinion, it's even easier to create an interesting and good color harmony when you paint with an analog media like watercolor, because you can just limit yourself to mixing a few colors. You're good to go. So yeah.
Okay. There was one question here. First and foremost, so you were saying that you were just kind of prepping the page with the water. So you lay down a whole swath of water before you actually bring any of the actual pigment into the process.
Yes, I have in this instance. Yes, exactly. And that helps me to create a soft edge before I even paint it in. So you see, this is a soft edge. It was created with zero effort on our part. I do want to perhaps go into a bit of a cooler feel on the left here.
For any particular reason, or just because that's
just
what
for
feels
fun
nice
to
right
create a contrast of temperature. That's pretty much the only real reason. So you can just kind of paint over stuff, and you see it starts to take shape. Now, to me, and this is again once again a bit of a Zen principle. By the way, 2 brushes. I'm going to use one because I don't want to get rid of what I already have here. So I'm going to pre-wet with the other brush this time. And what this does is it ensures I get a soft edge on this top part of the back. So I can just kind of smoothly connect it here. I was starting to make a point that I forgot, but that's fine.
As you're laying stuff in, so there's a person, Julia Crow asked, how do you decide how dark to go with your first layer? For you, you kind of approach this a little bit differently than what might be the conventional wisdom, right?
Yeah, I paint fairly direct watercolors. A lot of people, when they see my paintings, they are surprised. It's usually not people who paint in watercolor, but people who aren't used to it. They're surprised it's watercolor. They're surprised, oh, this can be done with watercolor. I am quite impatient with these things. I think in a good way. So I just like to get a good feel of what the end impression is going to be. I'm a big fan of that. So I like to see what it looks like. And as you get better, you can edit things in real time. You can change things in real time. If you don't like a color, you just paint over it, nothing happens. Usually the issue with beginners is they're worried that they messed it up. And that worry and that really takes away from the flow of watercolor. It's a very natural thing. Now here I'm going to do some wet and wet, which is considered the hardest technique in watercolor. I've already done some of it, but now I want to create a powerful core shadow here. So I'm kind of running along the edges, perhaps to get a feel of maybe reflected light here. I don't know if it's going to work, just kind of something I felt like doing. I'm going to do the same here. The idea with doing wet and wet is it's intuitive. It's very hard to calculate. It's based on a feeling. I know how wet the paint is by looking at it and by seeing the sheen. I know how thick of a paint I'm mixing, and I know once I place them in, I'm not going to get a disaster. But in the beginning, you will get a lot of disasters, and that's fine. That's where experimentation comes into play.
Yeah, don't be afraid to do like 30 of them, and each of those is you learning how to get to the results that you want.
Yeah, I like quantity, not in the sense of if I'm going to repeat this like a mule, it's going to end up being good at some point, but just because you have to experience it, that's the thing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like learning to walk, you fall, and don't do that again.
Yeah, exactly.
So you were saying that so typically
and
the
I just
conventional
want to,
wisdom.
sorry, I cut you off. I just want to show one more thing. You can also
Yeah.
smoothen the edge after the paint is there. I'm just coming back with some water and smoothening it out. Sorry, you were starting to say about the
Oh,
conventional wisdom.
no, it's okay. So when you go to smooth an edge like this, does it subtract from that hard edge, or does it like kind of soften outwards from that edge?
Yeah, that's actually a great question. So you're very perceptive, Stephen. That's a good question. So you can do it multiple ways. One way is you kind of help it move, flow out. So you come back with water and it kind of moves into the place you wet.
Mm-hmm.
The other way, which is a little, I think, more challenging, is you place the paint in, and then you kind of have to almost work on this edge where it is, kind of meet it where it is. It's not an easy thing to do. And the ideal to me, from, again, a Zen perspective, is just to pre-wet, then come back, and you don't even have to work hard. And you usually get a better result.
You get that free soft edge.
Yeah, exactly.
So again, the conventional wisdom for watercolor is usually to work light to dark. You start with the lightest things, and then you slowly add the darker areas, building up on it. When you were saying that you work directly, it's basically you painting the final result for the most part from the start.
Pretty much. You could call it alla prima. Yeah, pretty much. That's how I like to do it. I'm painting the thing directly. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I hope that answers your question earlier, Julia.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. Every once in a while, I'm worried about like what people will and won't know about something.
Yeah, definitely. It makes sense to ask all of the what seemingly basic questions. It's good.
Mm-hmm. What do you think is the most interesting difference for the way that you approach something that you've learned just with experience from what is typically taught
in watercolor? There are actually a few things. Wow, that's a good question. Could you repeat that?
Yeah. So it's like there's all these different things that people realize over time that are different in experience from the way that they're taught. And it's usually because your teacher is telling you something to make you learn something in a certain way or to play it safe. So you have space to pull back. What is it that you've learned in your experience that's different from the way that you were taught or learned?
Actually, most of it's more of a generalization, but most of the conventional wisdom or the things that are taught are false. Most of them, sad to say, but it is true. So, for example, a lot of people teach you to tape your paper, and I've been a proponent of the advantage of taping your paper. I've recently come to learn that it's counterproductive completely. There are some kind of nerdy watercolor reasons we can get into, but basically it's you're less likely to get the result you want when you tape down the paper. Starting light to dark, in a way I do that even in this demo because I'm putting in a wash, right? And then I'm kind of coming back with darker paint, right? But I'm not doing that in the conventional way of painting all the lights and then painting all the darks on top of them. So that's another kind of thing that could be interpreted as a rule that isn't. It really isn't. It's almost like you tell someone in oil, start from dark or start from light. I mean, you could do it either way. It doesn't really make sense to limit yourself,
Yeah, I think there's definitely a reason why someone taught it that way one time. Doesn't mean it's the only way to do a thing for all of eternity,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, like pretty much all of us, we don't sharpen pencils in the fancy fine art kind of way, It's not necessary all the time.
Yeah, it's not.
Julia was asking a follow-up question of, do you have beginner classes as well?
So what, like courses or classes that I actually teach online?
Let's go with either of those.
Yeah, I barely do. I have very few students because it's just there's not enough time. The courses I have, pretty much the main ones, the flagship ones, are what you can find now on Proko. So yeah, I'd say that's the main thing. I do live streams sometimes on the channel, just to kind of show different techniques or just to chat. But that's the pretty much the extent of classes I do.
Would you say that the difficulty level of your courses is greater than a beginner, or do you think that it can work for a beginner as well?
The frustration-free watercolor course is aimed at beginners and intermediates. What beginners both will benefit from it, because even intermediates tend not to be free in the way they paint. And that's the biggest benefit. But if you're a beginner, you're going to get all the techniques. You're going to get everything. So I think it's quite useful in that regard. Now, the watercolor realism course, you could say it's more advanced, but I would argue that the concepts aren't that difficult, right? When people think, okay, I'm going to create a realistic impression, it feels maybe a little intimidating. They expect it to be something complex. And sometimes it may be a little complex, but I think the techniques at the end of the day aren't rocket science. You can learn them quite fast. I do give a roadmap. So even if you're a beginner, I would say what's more important for the, let's say, watercolor realism course and bit of it in general is to want to paint realistically. If you have the desire to do it, which some people don't, and that's fine. Some people find it limiting. If you have the desire to do it, that's pretty much all you need. That's the way I see it. Could be a little wacky, but yeah.
No, I think it's important to have a different view than somebody else, even if it was a little bit wacky, you know?
Yeah.
There was another one here. So Jimmy, I think is how this name is
going
to be said.
I'm creating now a bit of contrast with just to accentuate the lighter area of the.
Do you often mix that kind of element into your studies, kind of giving it
actual
I like composition?
I like it a lot. I'm a big fan of painting a scene, so I often end up painting a scene and not just the object I'm painting. Whether the scene is just a backdrop, I kind of put in real fast.
Mm-hmm. So when you do a study, there was a stream that we did with, I forget his name right now. Another awesome, fantastic artist who. It was Lucas Panador was the guy. And he was talking about when he approaches a study, he doesn't necessarily look at every single study as trying to recreate exactly the original work. He'll do a study in a way where he's trying to learn and decode a certain aspect of the piece. Do you find yourself trying to do that with any of your studies, or are you often approaching it just wanting to do what you want to do?
That actually makes sense to me. The way I see studies is more of a way to test out how I bounce off of someone else's work, to experience creating the same work they have, so that maybe I glean something new about myself. Yeah, sometimes it could be a very specific thing of cracking a technique, like how someone actually achieved something. A good example of this is what you saw me do here with the wet and wet. So I was having a hard time to figure out how I can get a shape that has a very short distance smoothing. Like it just fades really fast, and it doesn't spread all over the page. It has its integrity and it stays dark, relatively dark, but also has a smooth edge. That's when I did look at some processes or videos and try to recreate the exact same thing. But even in that case, you could say it's not really recreating the full artwork. So yeah, it's more of a jazz thing, I think. It's how you bounce off of a specific subject matter and a specific art piece, a specific, maybe even an element within the art piece, like the use of colors, right? And how they create emotion, things like that. That's usually how I view it.
Yeah, I think it's a worthwhile way to approach that one.
Yeah.
There is a person, an ancient fan of yours, it would seem, with the account Black Dahlia, who said, "Oh my God, Liron! I've been watching Liron since he first started, and watching his progression has been amazing."
Thank you so much.
Yeah. So you don't need to take our word for it that Liron's a good teacher. Take Black Dahlia's.
Thank you.
Okay. So you're moving on to another one, it looks like.
Yeah,
what's going to be your goal here?
I don't really know. This is one I'm less familiar with, and I'm almost, when looking at it, I'm almost tempted to approach it more like a lock in kind of the entire core shadow, and then start diving into the details. It really depends on my mood. I don't have really a set way of doing these things. If I'm in the mood to just paint all the darks in one go, I will, to kind of divide it into light and dark. I do find that with watercolor, if you're and that's strategy. And I have a lesson on that, by the way, strategy talk in the courses. It's really important. Almost no one talks about watercolor in these terms, from what I can see. If you're going to commit to painting this entire dark shape, you'll have a hard time also putting in wet and darkening things as you do that. Okay, that's actually an important thing to have in mind, because you're almost committing to just painting a flat wash. I think Ruth, our dog, is crying. I'm going to open the door for her if she is. It's actually the baby. So yeah, very hard to discern.
Just so you guys know,
Ruth is human sounding. So yes.
You guys have you've done a very good job of demonstrating that watercolor can be done in even the most trying of circumstances. Dogs yelling, babies crying. You can use watercolor in any environment.
Yeah, that's for sure. Yeah.
So when you were talking about the different ways,
so if you're gonna commit, to paint this entire thing in one go, it's gonna be hard to interject wet into it. The thing you can, and of course I'm not gonna tell you can't do it, it's just a little harder. The thing you can do is take care of the edges, because that's still one shape. So what I think we'll do, I'll start somewhere in the forehead. I got a feel for it now, so I know how I'll start. So sometimes looking at it just for a couple of moments helps. Sometimes it does nothing. You're just stuck with the same kind of uncertainties. So yeah, I'm probably gonna go for a bit of a grayer overall feel here. We'll see what comes out. But I have put some water so that I can start creating this edge here. It's relatively smooth. And I'll probably just skip this group of hair for now. I don't see the point in merging it. So I have this kind of a set area I can work on. Could it be that I already made a mistake? I'm not sure. Let's see, this goes here, this goes there. Yeah, I'm gonna just, I'm gonna work with the potential mistake I made, and maybe not go for.
Yep. Is the sketch that you're drawing over, was this done in pencil, or is this something different?
No, it's pencil. It's just normal pencil. And I haven't done a mistake.
Say again?
Sorry. I haven't made a mistake.
Okay.
I just was imagining.
For the other people in the chat who are asking about materials, we'll go into like a whole stretch of materials, I think, here, paper paints and stuff.
Yeah, we can do that.
Do you use any particular kind of pencil? Does it matter? Or do you change anything based on where the pencil lays? Like, do you kind of like put it into a space where you know that you'll be able to paint over it? Or do you not really bother with changing where the pencil goes or how you use it?
That will really depend on the final look you're going for. The softer the lead is, the more likely it is to kind of be washed by the paint. So
where it'll diffuse out?
Yeah, exactly. So if you don't like very, very prominent pencil lines, I would definitely go for a softer lead. If you're a risk taker, you're a bit crazy, maybe go for a harder lead. Yeah, it comes down to that. I personally do like when the pencil lines, I don't mind them showing, but I do like when they kind of blend into, the
so you're not a crazy risk taker with the hard pencil lead. You go for the softer lead.
Yeah.
Okay. So the other questions here were about paper and your paints. Is there anything with the paints where you know that you're going to get like a considerably better performance out of the paints that you use, so you do use nicer ones, or do you think just use whatever you can get your hands on?
You said I'm not a risk taker. How's that? No, I'm using them. So you mean like, do I do things differently the way I use them, or like, how do you mean?
Do you go out of your way to get nicer watercolors because you know that you can use them in a specific way?
Yeah, usually the common kind of consensus, which is quite accurate, I will say, is single pigment colors work best. You want the fewest pigments you can get. Some paints, it's a bit of a fashion and collector's thing. So a lot of people like to have a lot of paints in their repertoire. And it's, of course, I don't think that's necessary at all, but people enjoy having the options, which is fine. I think if you can make sure that most of them are single or maybe just two pigments, it will probably make a difference. It will. There we go. We have a background now. It will probably work a little better if you use too many pigments. So if I mix two colors that each has like 3 pigments in them, it may lead to very awkward, uneven results. That's why I kind of try. And usually if you buy paints that are of kind of decent brand, you won't run into this issue pretty much ever. You can mix 5 colors; it's going to be fine.
Yes, that meaning something that where the paint itself is being given its color by one thing, rather than like a purple paint that is made up of like something that's cheap that's red and something cheap that's blue to make a purple.
Exactly. Yeah, when you do that, you get all sorts of undesired granulations and weird effects that, if you like, that's great. But there are granulating colors that are actually good, so you don't have to get these effects this way. There are better ways of achieving it.
Mm-hmm. And then the last thing about supplies, I think, for right now is, what do you recommend for paper?
So there are 3, I would say, main brands that are pretty interchangeable. What I'm painting on right now, if I'm not mistaken, is the Saunders Waterford. These things are a little hard to spell, but it's kind of like it sounds, Saunder Waterford. And Arches, it's spelled, is pretty good too.
Yeah, I dropped those in the chat for anyone who is interested here, and for anyone who's rewatching it later as a VOD. That's also in the chat there too.
Cool, yeah, so they can find everything. Also, Baohong is pretty good. That's Baohong. That's a relatively new one on the scene that is really, really good. That I like.
Okay. Yeah, I'll drop that in here for you guys. Yeah, I think everyone has like their specific preferences for how they want to deal with something within their medium. So it's always nice to find out. But don't think that it's the secret, guys. The real secret is the knowledge.
No. Yeah, the real secret is the knowledge you don't have, and I have it. So be sure.
Yeah, you could get it for 20% off right now.
Yeah, buy my stuff.
For where you're at in this process, you've gotten to do some work in here. You're mixing warms and cools like you were talking about to kind of get those like nice color relations. Yeah. Are you choosing to leave the warmth in the highlights and putting the cool stuff in the shadows with any particular reason?
Not really. I'm kind of moving between the two. I am trying to where the light kind of starts, maybe, to have more warmth. But it's really, it's not that consistent, actually. Not here, at least.
Okay. Do you find yourself exploring a little bit more when it is something where you're just kind of injecting color, like with these?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. It's sometimes funny when you really kind of let loose. It can lead to wonderful results, but sometimes it's like a disaster again. The color, like nothing works, and you wonder how could I have messed this up so badly. Sometimes with the colors in particular, if you take this, put it in Photoshop, turn it black and white, you probably won't feel there's any issues with it. It's just on the color side of things. And value is what gives it the realistic feel anyway, so you could say it's not as important. But I think it is important.
I think there's a nice element to having some other colors, but like you said, it's value that does the work.
Yeah. Exactly.
So here in the chat, Anthony Damazin said the real secret is inside all of us. Yes.
And
then Cloud,
the friends we made
along the way. Yeah.
Along the way, yeah, exactly.
But Cloud Fluff also says the real secret is goat sacrifice. Is that is that how you gained your art skills? Because I don't know if that was what I did.
I have not.
Should we be trying that?
Definitely not the way I got them. Not at all.
I mean, maybe we should try it. I don't know.
I don't
know if I could bring myself to do it.
I don't have access to goats, actually.
Dang it. Okay.
Yeah, it's a problem.
Well, if like listen, we'll all meet up here in San Diego in like a month or so. We'll have sourced a bunch of goats, and then we'll all make a
That
bunch of
could work.
courses that are even better.
That could work. Yeah, I'm gonna step off camera because I'm hot. I'm gonna remove a layer. Don't worry. This is a t-shirt underneath it.
Yeah, if you guys like, this is what happens when you guys buy courses. More clothes go away. It's that kind of stream, guys. In the meantime, I'll let you guys know that there is a sale on Proko right now. That's pretty much everything on the website that you guys want. That can be brushes. That can be pretty much anything that you're looking for. There's also reference photos, different things like that that usually are like can sometimes be a little bit too expensive for people. But right now, everything is 20% off, including Liron's course over at this URL that you see on screen right now.
You're good at what you do, Steven. You can put me back on.
I tried.
I should have just asked. I'm like, why do I have to step physically off the frame?
Yeah, I'll just make it go away. It's okay. Yeah. But no, if for any reason you guys find that buying a course is too much or anything right now, it's okay. You can still just go check out Liron's stuff on his socials, or go over to proko.com/free to be able to see like a whole sampler of different free lessons with some other materials in there. So I'm gonna bring Liron back now.
Yeah, you can do that.
Yeah, which one is it? There we go.
There we go.
Yeah, welcome back. I'm glad that you got to start that one out.
Yeah. I was sweating here. I don't know. It's cold and then it's hot. It's maybe the painting. Yeah.
I think your body's just trying to become one with the medium. You said it's all water, so.
Yeah, it could be. I'm beginning to flow here. So now you can just start pushing it in whatever direction you want. Obviously, and this is actually a good example of working light to dark in a way. Wasn't planning on doing it, but I kind of just set some light to mid values, and obviously you can go much darker here. So we can do that. Maybe I'll just continue setting up some of the smaller details so that this can dry just for a couple of more seconds. And then we can get to it.
Do you ever just keep a blow dryer handy on the side?
Yes, I do, but it's very noisy, and I usually need breaks. If I'm painting something really challenging, I'll need occasional breaks if I really have to focus on stuff. So I don't need it as much. I think in the past I could have kind of do it and just keep going, but now I don't know. I think the more I kind of learn about what's going on paper, the more I'm aware of the moments where I really need to have all my faculties. So what ends up happening is, I just don't use a hairdryer. I just get up for a moment, have a cup of coffee, or
I think it's good to take a minute to step away, and when you come back, you usually see your mistakes or see something with clearer eyes.
Yeah, usually for me, it's just to see that something does work, even when I'm uncertain. Yeah, it just ends up working. Now, I got the eye in the wrong place completely, but we can fix it. So this is actually the eyelid. Ooh. Yeah, so this is fun because sometimes, people are worried about watercolor and not, you can fix stuff, you can do things. Now, maybe I'm exaggerating a bit and I kind of got lost in the shadows. That's fine. It doesn't look that off, but I don't know. I see it and I can't unsee it. So we'll see what we can do as we lay in the next kind of the next layer of darks. Usually, the thing is, people think they created something that doesn't work. They're just a couple of steps away from completing it. They just haven't really finished the painting. That's something I noticed with a lot of people. And I always tell my followers, you can just let me paint the rest of it, and a painting you thought was doomed is not doomed. You just haven't finished it yet. So that's something that often happens.
There's a common issue I think that comes up pretty much every time someone reaches out for their first critique about a drawing that they were doing, where they're trying to do it in a more realistic way, where pretty much universally they're all afraid to go dark. They won't actually put a solid value, like a solid shadow family into their value structure. Is there anything like that you see as really common in people working in watercolor?
Definitely. That is very common. Most people don't go dark enough, not even close. And that leads to a lot of things just feeling incomplete. That's their only problem is they could just continue and develop the overall impression, the end result, whatever. Yeah. So what I'm doing here, like for example, I am focusing on just a small area for a couple of moments and doing just that. I'm just starting to establish some darks here. And that's where, like something, for example, the previous one I did kind of focus in on an area and worked to completion. And here, I, as I said in the beginning, I kind of verbalized it before. I didn't even know how relevant it's going to be. If you commit to let's paint a large shape and you're not just, I'm going to work on this section, with watercolor, often because you're limited in time, everything happens really fast. There's a limit to how much you can, show. And I told you I'm going to be bold. I just placed that shadow in. It still hasn't pushed it far enough at all because it's very wet. One thing people have to understand, again, about watercolor is it's going to dry much lighter. So you always have to account for how much lighter it's going to dry. You always have to have that in mind. If it looks right when you put it on paper, it's too light, usually.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay. It's the kind of thing that you just don't learn without the experience of it,
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Chad Estioko in the chat asked, when building up my set of brushes, what's more important, size, variety, or tip? What would you say there's any particular thing that you would approach first, or is it just a mixture of all of those?
I think it will depend on your application, right? What you're trying to achieve. If you are interested in painting really large paintings, the size will matter. Most beginners just get started with, painting A4, A3 sizes. So it's not that big of a concern. I think you find what kind of brush you enjoy the most. For most people, it's going to be either using a flat brush or using a round, like the one I'm using right now. It's a round brush. It has a tip. That's the more common one that will give you the most versatility, the most, what will make the most sense for most people. So yes. The thing is, you can do wonders with just one brush. If you have one brush that you got a good handle on, you can do a lot with it. For me, something like this is Skoda's Barocco size 16. I can paint pretty much everything with that. Same for this one by Michael Soloviev. You can do a lot with just these brushes. You don't need many.
And who the two brush manufacturers? What were those names again?
Skoda, ESCODA, I think. It's like doing math during a live stream. It's really hard.
I think that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. And Michael, it's Michael's is Michael, and Soloviev, it's SOLOVIYEV. He's a really great painter, great watercolorist.
Okay, it's interesting. We have a course on drawing from an artist named Mikhail Soloviev.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, it's so close.
Funny. Yeah, it's so close, but it's definitely not the same person.
Yeah,
I don't think. Yeah, it's so funny. Yeah.
Names, man. So actually, this week, Liron, I want to thank you. You're a combo breaker in a very good way, because all these live streams that we're doing for this week and next week, we have an intense amount of Stevens. So we have Stephen Michael Hampton. We just did one. We'll be doing another one with Stephen Bauman. There's earlier this week we did one with Stephen. I forget his last name right now. Another Stephen.
People have to know the fact you don't remember their name is not an insult. You're doing things on a live stream and just recalling that information is very difficult.
Yeah, it's rough, man. Like I'm not gonna be able to do all this all the time.
And you're good at it. It's still really
you flatterer.
But yeah, I'm happy to break the Stephen.
It's a curse.
Yeah, curse. Yeah, I was gonna say curse.
No. It's a curse. It's a curse. You don't have to dance around it. There's too many Stevens here.
Yeah. It's
Yeah,
funny. And then you get
it's a
a
lot.
Liron, which is, what is that name anyway? Yeah.
I mean, that's a good name. And plus, I like it because we can just actually do your link for the course and everything. It's just proko.com
Yeah,
slash
that's so
Liron.
nice.
It's
Yeah. Oh man,
wonderful.
it must be rough with all the Stevens.
Dude, I hate it. So even for myself, StephenClark.com, there's actually this old man who's been running that website for like ages and ages. And on the website, he has a list of other Stephen Clarks that he very kindly
Wow,
puts on there with information about them and their websites.
that is really kind of him.
There's too many of
I
those.
should I do the same for Liron Yanconsky's?
If you find any others who reach out to you, I
Yeah.
think it's a nice thing. But there'll
Yeah.
be all three of you in the world.
Yeah.
I think Anthony brings up a good point in the chat here. This is where we find out that your middle name is actually some variation of Steven.
Yeah, I'm sorry to disappoint. It's not. I don't even have a middle name. Sometimes
Ooh,
I
that's
wish
even
I
better.
had. Yeah, right. It's mysterious. I should just drop the last name and just be Liron, like Madonna or something.
I mean, in art, that is kind of the classic thing.
Yeah.
I want to call attention to the fact that you've really brought a bunch more layering and gradation to the shadows below the eye there.
I've committed now to getting something that is quite close to the final result. I'm kind of alternating between different modes. Sometimes I'm squinting my eyes to not see the specifics and just figure out if the overall thing works. That's something that often happens. Sometimes I'll stand up so that I have some distance even between me and the painting. Like right now, I'm like, okay, let's just get rid of this. There shouldn't be, let's treat it like a proper core shadow. There's no, like, everything here should be darker than the lightest part here.
Mm-hmm.
That's something big I took from Stan's work, for sure. Yeah.
So,
So,
and what is it that you've been doing to kind of save that eye that you were talking about?
what do you? Oh, yeah. I don't know. I just kind of. It looks okay now. I don't know.
Okay. Do you think that there was anything?
Okay.
Was it just like adding a little shadow in an area where there was a midtone value to kind of like nudge it upwards a little bit?
Maybe. And I think honestly, I'm just the angle I'm looking at it was a little skewed. I might have judged it a little. Is that? I think that's a quote from somewhere. I might have judged it too harshly. I think there's something like that. I might have treated you too harshly. I think that's
Yeah.
yeah.
You think it was actually okay?
Yeah, I think it was better than I thought it was. Yeah.
Okay.
And at this stage, it's just small little things that push it more towards looking okay. That's where a lot of beginners kind of get frustrated because they're not sure what is lacking, and even if they would know what it is, they wouldn't know how to change it. So that's one thing just to be aware of. It's fine if you're at that point. I've definitely been there. I'm now bringing back some of there's a bit, you can see a bit of the nostril within the shadow. So I'm kind of lifting. That's another watercolor technique. You could use just a piece of paper and dab, but that's going to lift very aggressively. I'm not interested in that.
So with this, how long would you say how long is the window for you to be able to make an adjustment like that? Is it ever too late to do this?
I think you have about, it depends on how wet you've gone, but let's say ideal scenario, if you put something really wet on paper, you have about a minute or so, or even 2 minutes. If you started right out the gate quite dark, 30 seconds, 40 seconds maybe. And if you're trying to do everything together, managing your edges and thinking of colors too, that definitely adds another layer of challenge to it. And often these kinds of paintings are ones that also there's the potential to not complete them in one sitting, which is fine too. It's just sometimes you need that. I don't know if it's a break or just to refresh yourself and not be too caught up on what you're seeing.
Is there any sort of element to the idea? Well, I guess I'll approach it this way. If I'm coloring something with markers like Copics and different things like that, there is kind of a necessity to work on an area in blocks because you can't necessarily blend something into an area that is really well dried later. Does that happen with watercolor in your experience, or is it okay to jump back in even like a week later?
So there's a lot you can do, but there are some things you can't, or it's really, really hard. One thing you can do once something dries is you can just do the same thing over it. You can pre-wet it again. Just go ahead and do that. And then over that, you can start establishing the shadows again. There's a bit of a limit to how much your paper will be able to handle. At some point, it's just going to give up on you.
In buckling, or its ability to absorb?
No, it's just, it won't, you'll feel it when you paint over an existing layer of paint, that the next layer either dries really fast and you can't get the same wetted wet effects, or it just looks off. Yeah. The reason is, the paper is just, it's kind of woven together, and then once it's wet, it gets all knotty, lots of knots in it, and it's not going to have the same characteristics it had. That's usually the issue. Yeah.
Okay, I appreciate that. Blue 3 was asking if you've ever worked with gouache and what your thoughts are on it.
Yeah, I have. I've shown a painting on the previous live stream. The Brooklyn Bridge painting was done kind of half gouache, half watercolor. I was fascinated with gouache and kind of trying it out because it's like watercolor pretty much, just thicker. And you can get, you can paint, you can basically fix things a lot easier because you can paint over, light over dark, things you can't do with watercolor. I had a good time, but at the end of the day, I enjoy the way watercolor behaves more. So gouache will end up just being a glorified opaque, thick paint that I can use over stuff to bring back highlights. It's not, I don't think it's going to be ever like my main thing. So that's where I'm at. Watercolor really has captivated me. It's very difficult to work with media that is, mix, apply, mix, apply. I really don't enjoy that as much.
Okay. Did you ever, was there a time when you used something that was an entirely different kind of medium, like you were working with acrylics at the beginning or something like that?
No, not really. I am a big fan of pen and ink and kind of the urban sketching scene. I've enjoyed that a lot. That was actually my kind of gateway to watercolor. I've seen all of these people that they do these, what do you call these? There are these plein air festivals and urban sketching symposiums, and they sketch real fast the scene in front of them, what they see on the street, and then some of them used to add just a bit of watercolor on top of it to give it some just a bit of a vibrancy. And I love that. That's how I discovered watercolor initially, funny enough. Yeah, and then I started looking at watercolor in general, and I discovered, people painting with it in a way I wasn't aware is possible. Someone like Joseph Zbukvich was considered one of the best in the world. If you want to later, we can show some of his paintings. Sure. And I was blown away. Watercolor can do that. I had no idea, and then I started to want to paint in the same vein, kind of.
Nice. Yeah, I'm glad you found a medium that works that well for you.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
When it just kind of clicks.
Yeah.
Inktology in the chat says, "This is rad, looking super cool." I agree.
Thank you. Thank you.
There was another one from Chatistioko. They were the one who was asking about the brushes, I believe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They said they're going to do some one brush studies and see what they can get out of it. See just how far they can push with one brush.
Yeah, you can do a lot. I'm painting this mostly with this smaller brush. Sometimes I'm switching between the two, but mostly, yeah, it's very possible. It makes your life a lot easier. I talk about that in the courses too, by the way.
Where can people find those courses, Liron?
I think if you head over to proko.com, and I'm pretty sure there's a link in the description box.
There is indeed. Yeah, it's 20%
Yes.
off right now for the rest of the month.
Yeah, and sometimes
Just
you
a
can see
gentle
in the
reminder.
banner up top sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah, it felt like a good spot to drop it. I feel bad when I take
Yeah.
too long to throw to the idea of the sale.
Yeah, no, it's fine. I find that if you give people what they really want, the sale is inevitable. I think the best kind of, and this goes to, by the way, painting as well. The best paintings I make are the ones that really hard to say goodbye to once they're sold. That's how I know something is really good. It's when it's hard to put a price on. I have paintings that I would put just a ridiculous price on that they're very unlikely to ever sell for that price just because I don't want to, let them go.
So when you sell your paintings, I'm sure this is also a question for a bunch of the people that are in the chat here, as people who all typically want to be professional artists. Are you making them just for yourself and then deciding to list them, or do you ever try to make something that you hope will sell with the intention for the visuals?
Yeah, that usually doesn't happen. I kind of have the privilege of, I knew when I got started with art and creating a business around it, that it's easier to sell the information and the teaching. And I knew for a long time I wanted to teach, and I enjoyed art, so it was the most natural kind of thing to do. So I built my business essentially around information products, you could say, in the driest marketing sense of painting. And so I had the privilege of having an income that I'm not dependent on selling the paintings. And I could very selfishly paint whatever I wanted right from the beginning. And yes, maybe there were times where I would paint a scene I knew would do well. I used to sell at a local art fair here, and I knew what people like to buy, but that's a long time ago. Right now, it's more about, I'm just going to paint whatever is interesting to me. Sometimes it's really just personal stuff that you would think no one will have interest in, but then the result is so good because it's something that really speaks to you. Yeah, I have one painting that comes to mind that it's a friend of mine at a restaurant. I don't think it will be really hard to sell that one. Really hard. Yeah.
But it's just a piece that you really enjoy.
Yeah, I really enjoy looking at it. I really enjoy owning it myself, almost like an art collector would. And I'm kind of playing around with the thought of just gifting it to the friend at some point. Yeah.
I mean, that would be nice, because then you know it would still get to be treated with value,
Yeah, definitely. I have a different feeling towards just giving it as a gift to that person who's in it, for sure. I have no problem doing it right now. And I hope they appreciate the fact that if I were to sell it, it would be for a large sum of money, so they can treat it like that. Yeah.
So there's a question here, and then I have a follow-up after that.
Yeah, for sure.
A dweller on two planets asks, what about fixative? Do you apply those? And what kind, if you do?
Yeah, so that's something I hope to maybe start understanding better. I have seen some interesting videos of people using wax to fix their watercolors. It's definitely something I would like to try, like to see how far I can get with avoiding the glass in its entirety, because
so it can be displayed openly.
Yeah, collectors have a problem with glass, not to mention with watercolor in general. And now I'm just kind of filling in the blanks here. I don't know. I feel like it could use a bit more. It's not just black and white. I'm going to establish some things I'm not seeing in the Bargue reference. Yeah, I would love to maybe figure that out. As of right now, I'm still not sure how. I've seen the wax fixative looked really good. I have played around with, I think it was a Winsor Newton varnish that's supposed to seal the painting. And, I tested it out on something I didn't care about, and I poured water over it. It was good. It actually worked. Yeah, it's I think the matte varnish.
Okay.
Yeah, so it could be done. I'll be interested in seeing how I can maybe avoid putting the painting behind glass, because you do see less of it. Maybe there's a way to mount the paper almost like you would a canvas. Definitely something to try out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it would be an interesting one. If you guys are interested, I'm sure that when Liron finds out exactly how he likes doing that best, he'll probably post that over on his YouTube channel, which you guys
You
can
are
find.
good. You are good at what you do.
You guys can find that with this name that you guys see on screen right now, because he'll definitely end up posting that one.
Yeah, I will for sure.
The other one I was curious about is, so I've seen some interesting tutorials. I think there was one from Wiley Becker, who works on like a much thicker watercolor paper, but I believe she's predominantly using pencils for a lot of it. But there's some part of the process that necessitates the watercolor paper. And she was talking about the difficulty of scanning that. Have you tried to scan your pieces?
Yeah, I'm scanning them all the time. When I send a painting to an auction or to anywhere, really, I'm scanning. When I upload my paintings to Instagram, I'm scanning. I don't know exactly what issue she ran into. It could be sometimes the texture of the paper shows. I do find that scanning a hot press paper that is just smooth works a little better. I am more of a fan of cold press. Everything you're doing here is done on cold press paper. You can very easily see by the way my edges are almost always jagged like that. There's a bit of a tooth to the paper. And you can see it in the light and shadow. And if you want to get these kinds of dry brush effects where you kind of hint at details, you need more water, then yeah, that's the way to get it. With that said, if you're more into illustration, even gouache, I think it works really well with hot press paper. And yeah, the scan does end up being a little more tidy, I think. But yeah, I haven't really run into issues like that. My issue is scanning huge paintings. When I have
the classic.
yeah, I have my methods, but it's not simple at all.
Are you like scanning one area and then merging them after, or taking pictures?
That's easy business. Like this, for example, this I painted for another like very similar demo. I scan, half, and then I do the whole Photoshop automate photo merge. If you're unfamiliar with that, what are you doing with your life? Yeah, it's so much easier. It can take just a bunch of scans, but then if you go double that size, then you start running into issues because you can just scan a quarter every time. It's a mess.
It's like misaligned. It's a whole thing.
Yeah, it's a whole thing. Yeah.
So with this piece, I think it seems like you're either waiting for it to dry or you feel like this one is completed.
Yeah,
do you have anything to say about this one?
Completed. I feel like this is pretty much completed. Probably if I, usually after a good night's sleep, which I don't get much of these days.
Yeah, you have a new child, so.
Yeah, that's the thing. No, actually, but we're pretty blessed. We're sleeping decently okay, I think.
Nice.
So I can just look at it and I'll know instantly what's missing, after a good night's sleep with a bit of perspective. It is true what they say, I also have the benefit of just looking at my monitors here and seeing a smaller version of the painting. I can do the same here on paper on my camera. I have a preview, so that really helps. If you don't have that, which why would you if you're not making painting videos? You can just take a few steps back. Works just as well. I'm going to do the same kind of contrast thing here.
Yeah, I like you adding the framing elements.
Yeah, it's fun. Just to give it a bit of to give meaning to the highlights is what I usually say, because right now things need to be viewed in the full context, and right now you don't have it. but once you put in the background, and like I love the way it looks now, so I know I need to push it to be darker, right? Because it's gonna dry lighter. And sometimes doing wet and wet with a bit of a different variation of color does make a difference, by the way. If I come back now with a bit more blue in my mix, it does tend to, sometimes once it dries, you can see some interesting nuances there. That's something I like to do.
A nuance in any particular kind of way?
Sometimes the pigments will split, so you'll see the red and the blue separate. They separate a bit. Sometimes you'll get a really interesting effect where the edge of an area will have more of one color than the other. It's interesting things that sometimes occur. It's very hard to control, of course. I don't know why I feel like going a little more green here. So I'm using the same three colors. I don't even know what they are, but I'm just increasing my yellow and the percentage of yellow and blue, but it's still quite a lot of red, as you can see by how neutral it still is, right? It's not a bright green by any stretch. And then here I don't need a strong contrast, so I'm just gonna go lighter, Yeah, that's how I like to frame my portraits. It's a very common thing to do. I have not invented it.
It's an important caveat sometimes.
Yes, important. Don't credit it. Don't credit me for it.
So there was one question here. So
Yes.
I'm trying to find who was the person who asked this one. IVC was asking, does watercolor fade quickly in your experience?
No, modern day watercolors are actually really good in that regard. They should last hundreds of years. You should do your own research as to the brand you're using, because some of them and some pigments are more light fast than others. You want great light fastness. Some pigments that are highly coveted for their looks, like vermilion. Vermilion is a little toxic, so they don't really use it much as far as I know, but they make like fake vermilion. I was trying to make that into a fake million. It just didn't work in real time, I can tell you. I was processing it out. Nah, I'm not going to do it.
It's faux million.
Yeah, faux million is good. Yes, that's good. So what happens with these, they make a vermilion, but it's really has low light fastness, and it does fade.
I see.
Yellows and reds tend to be the bigger offenders of this, usually. Yeah.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
Has there ever? This is just a personal question for myself.
Yeah.
As
definitely.
a person who often looks through, like you'll come across old art supplies. If you saw some just ancient watercolor set that's like from like 40s or 50s or 60s or something, would you be excited at the possibility of buying this and getting to use it, or would it be something where you're like, it's gonna have its downsides, I don't want to bother, I'll just use my modern ones?
I wouldn't be against it. It could be interesting to try. I don't think it will necessarily create the result I want, because I'm sure it was a completely different thing back then. Yeah, but just out of curiosity, yeah, sure, that could be something I'll be excited about. Yeah, I can see myself interested in that.
Yeah, every once in a while, like I go to thrift stores a lot, and I'll see like these really old art supplies that are just kind of bundled up in something because maybe some like old person passed and they had a big collection of stuff in their office. And so every once in a while, I'll pick up some pack of like colored pencils or a pen from like the 60s or 70s because they're so easy to tell visually that they're from then, just to see what you get.
And do you find that they're hard to use? Things usually dry out, and
for the colored pencils, they've all been pretty bad.
Really?
I think because of the
Colored
wax
pencils?
content. Yeah, I think the wax content has just like, it's kind of, the oil has probably like diffused in some way over time, got bleached by the wood. But for pens, oh man, it's awesome. It's wonderful.
Really?
We just don't make
pens
nibs like we used to.
Really? Yeah. Pens have a rich history to them, and there's collectors, and there's super expensive ones too, as far as I know. Yeah. For sure. With watercolor, you run into a lot of issues. The tube, the content just separates with time. With time is like, when it's 20, 30, 40 years old. Yeah, so one thing I had no idea. I bought there was a sale on Old Holland's watercolors. You don't even see them anymore. I don't think you can find them. Just the local art store had probably an old supply of it, and I just squeezed it out of the tube, and it was a mess. All the gum arabic separated from the pigment it was a mess. Now I didn't know that, but you could take a toothpick and just mix it inside that's a thing people do for colors that are a little older. I just wasted the thing immediately. I had no idea. Yeah,
I don't blame you though. I would have done the same thing. There would have been in that moment, it's like, gross, you gotta clean this up now, but you could save it. Do you have any others that you're looking to do today, or do you want to kind of just discuss some questions?
Yeah, we can discuss. We can do as many Q&A as you want. I think in terms of demos, we're good. If people have any questions about anything they saw here, about anything at all, I'd be happy to go as long as people have questions.
Yeah, this is your chance, guys. We don't often just go to a Q&A like this. Ask your questions.
Yeah. By the way, what I was doing here is just trying to. I felt like the kind of folds and creases above the eye were not clear enough, so I just darkened this. Sometimes you work around things. Something is not light enough, you darken its surrounding, even though it's not darker. So yeah, just a quick note on that.
Okay. Yeah. No, I appreciate that one. Like you said, so much of things, it's you were looking for the giving meaning to either the shadows or the lights by that contrast.
Yes, exactly.
That's an important one.
Yeah.
There was one. So earlier when we first started this thing, someone had asked if they could have a link to the reference when you were working on the torso. These are Bargue plates. If you do a quick Google search on the name that you see in the title of this, you'll find tons of these. They're a pretty standard thing for artist studies and practice.
Yeah, and they could be a little hard to categorize. You'll have to do a bit of research, but I did find at least one website that really organizes them. There are a couple of series, and within the series, there are a lot of these, individual plates. So you have to kind of venture out a bit and see what you can find, because it's old. There are tens of these multiple, 50, 60, 70, 100 maybe. I'm not sure.
That sounds right. I like the idea of the 50, 60, 70, 100. I think
that's pretty accurate. I think it's 100, 1,000. I don't know. Bargue is very prolific.
Indeed. Yeah, the one thing that I like about them, if you guys in the chat do go and search for them, that there are some where it's a series where it's breaking it down, like basically how you painted these, where it's kind of like rigid structure shapes, shadow shapes. And then over a series of 3 of them, it'll gain more shape and color fidelity over time.
Yeah. And it's a great tool to learn how to, at the basis of drawing is just observation. And I think it's a great tool to just understand what is required to be accurate. I think a lot of beginners underestimate what it takes, not in the sense of you don't have the talent, in the sense of you're not actually looking and putting enough work into figuring out what's next to what. And this is as simple as it gets, right? You get a couple of basic measurements, and then you lay everything on top of them. So if you're into that, I'm going to be perfectly honest. I traced both of these because it just sounded a little, maybe this one I sketched, I don't remember. The larger one I definitely traced because it's faster and it's more accurate. And all I care about is demonstrating the watercolor. This one I did sketch, by the way. You can see I marked the pelvic tilt. I don't know if it comes through the camera.
I don't know if we can see it here, but it's a good notation.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, if you're into that kind of figuring out how to measure stuff, there you go. Really good.
For anyone who's gotten to this point in this video and in this chat and everything, I actually did post a link to the one that you were working from in the chat. So if you guys are interested, give it a look. Marco was asking, have you ever tried digital watercolors? If you have, what's the best program for it? They've heard that Rebelle is quite interesting, but it never feels the same quite as traditional stuff.
Yeah, and I have looked at the chat from the previous stream, and I missed a lot of questions. I actually felt bad about it. But there was one that mentioned a couple of software that they mentioned, because I mentioned then that I did try one kind of digital watercolor software. It was scary how it had its own logic. Like I could start to anticipate what will happen, but it's completely different from real watercolor. Completely different. So yeah, I haven't seen anything that comes close. But the one they did mention then in the chat, the person who mentioned it, it was either that one you just mentioned, Rebel, or there was one with a K, I think, in the name, that came close, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
Came close to feeling like something.
Is it? I'm just saying art programs right now. Krita.
Yeah, that one.
Is that the one?
Yeah, I think it was the one. Yeah, I think.
I'm just guessing here. I am not a watercolor person. I rarely need a really nice brush engine. A Dweller on Two Planets asked, do you often paint in nature or do fast sketches? If so, what is your process? Outlining and then watercoloring in the studio?
Yeah, that's another thing, especially for watercolor, because it's a relatively easy setup. You don't need a lot of things. Though, people do oil paintings, whatever, plein air. But with watercolor, it's quite popular. I do think it brings out something different. I do tend to see colors in a different way when I'm outside. It's almost like it's not that I can match the color better, it's that I can see the almost potential in it a little better. And I can break down, if I see an interesting purple, for example, I can break it down really easily to reds and blues and make it look really, really good and vibrant. Something that I can't do as well from a photo. If you are looking for ultimate accuracy, probably a photo and working in studio will get it to you. What a lot of watercolorists do that are very proficient in plein air is they do the research work as a plein air, and then they come back to the studio. They also took a photo and they've been there. They felt the scene, which for most scenes I paint, I have been there and I have felt the scene myself. So I think there are a lot of advantages to working plein air. It opens something different in you that you can create much better results too. And sometimes if you did a good enough job on a painting, you can come back to it in the studio and add to it and take it to its final form. Yeah. So I would love to do more plein airs. I walk around my neighborhood and I'm like, this would be a great subject. I need to come out here and paint it for sure. I'll probably try and do more of it in the upcoming months, hopefully.
Okay. I will say there's a video here on your channel where you go through your plein air sketchbook. I posted that in the chat for everybody. If you guys
thank you. That's fun. Yeah, that's fun because it does bring out different stuff. And then I can, you can come back to that sketchbook maybe even years later and find something you really like. I could dig out the photo somewhere, find it somewhere on my phone and, do a more polished version, especially if it's been a while and you've grown as an artist during that time.
Okay. So in bringing up that video of yours, I actually noticed in the background. So you have a big old Pokemon card in the background of that set that you have in that video.
Yes.
Have you ever tried?
I painted quite a few Pokemon. I don't have them here accessible, but if you scroll down a bit on my Instagram, you will find them. I'm a big fan. I actually have a beautiful card right here hung up on the wall. It's an Aerodactyl EX, but it's going to be hard to. I can just bring it over. I like this card a lot. I'll just show you. There we go.
So for anyone who does want to see that, though. Oh, look at that.
Yeah.
One of the more I can't
prettier cards.
Is it
That's
Skarmory?
an Aerodactyl. And they took a lot of liberties with the. What am I doing? I can just show it here.
There we go. Thank you. Yeah, I thought it was Skarmory for a second. I was confused.
No, it's not. Sorry for the yeah.
Look at that. That's a good piece, though.
I love this. This is what happens when they actually take some liberties. They don't just paint the Pokemon in the most boring of ways. So yeah, I don't know. I always liked this card, so I have it hung up here above my my desk.
Just as a reminder of something beautiful.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. I also have some artwork here that's not mine on the wall there. Oh, yeah.
Did you see a while back? So I think anyone who was a Pokemon fan, we're all very familiar with the look of that classic watercolor art.
I love that. Yeah.
Did you see recently where someone was showing what the actual original pieces looked like and how
Oh,
different they
wow,
were?
that's fantastic. Yeah. Oh, like the initial design, stuff like that.
Like well even the original watercolor pieces, like the
Yes.
images that we think of, there's
Yeah,
like it
it's
always looked super
fantastic.
like blown out, and like it was like basically like two values made up the entire thing.
Yeah, yeah.
But there was
And
so much
the
more gradation.
Yes, yes, a lot of gradation. They found that like they posted really high quality scans of those. Um, it's a treat. Yeah, I love that style. I love the kind of it's almost like the real vintage one. It's very chibi style, but
Hmm.
it's the OG chibi style. There are a few artworks that are amazing.
Yeah.
I might have. Where is it? I'm not sure where it is. I have a painting I did of a really nice scene from Pokemon, but it'll be
Okay.
hard to find. Yeah.
It's okay. It like right now, so it's hard to go and like pull the stuff out. If you guys want to see them, now that Liron remembers it, maybe he'll go
Exactly.
post it on his Instagram that you see at this link below,
Yeah.
or a link in the description. But in the meantime, I think there are some other questions in this chat. Would you like
Yeah.
those?
Yeah, definitely.
All right. So, Salsamderite was asking, what should be the steps for setting up my first anatomy painting with a voluntary non-professional subject? Have you worked with anyone in person?
Yeah, I won't be able to answer that. I haven't really gone into that's something I was like, how do people do that? How do people find these, models that I have no idea, honestly. Um, what I see here, there's a lot of kind of model sketching meetups and
Mhm.
groups where you either pay like a really low sum or sometimes they're free. And you just join it. So you don't really have to set up anything else. You just go there and you find a spot around the model and you paint or sketch. That's how I would go about it because I wouldn't know how to set it up. Yeah.
I agree. Yeah, I think starting with a group is also nice if you're doing it for the first time. Remove all the other hurdles of doing this one on one. Just be
Hmm.
one person in a whole group.
Yeah. Yeah.
For what it's worth, when we set up something with a model, which we don't do too often,
Hmm.
usually there's either someone that we know who has set up those other groups, like you were talking about, and has a connection, or we'll frankly open something like Craigslist where someone's advertising
Really?
being an art model. Yeah.
Yeah, because especially the older kind of original videos on Proko and the anatomy courses, it's really impressive what he's done with the models and just having such high quality reference material with the movement as well.
Yeah.
Um,
It's important.
yeah, when I see this, I'm like, how did he create this detailed of a course? It's crazy. I
It-
just do the processes. I do that. It's very curriculum oriented, but like it takes something beyond to do that. And I guess being studying at an atelier and then teaching it gives you kind of the background to do that because I
Very
wouldn't even
much
know
so.
how to. Yeah, I wouldn't even know how to approach that kind of a thing.
I mean,
Yeah.
there was one though. There's a guy. He's a real buff guy who's in one of the early anatomy videos. He was
Okay.
just a dude who worked in the building. He went by one
Really?
time. Yeah, like they were already working with a lot of models and stuff.
Okay.
So it was something that they were doing and already had an avenue for.
Hmm.
But there was a guy who went by when they were kind of like setting stuff up.
Hmm.
And he was like, "You guys do like pictures and stuff," and it led to them talking about it. And he was just a
Wow.
big dude, and he was like, "Yeah, I'd be up for doing that sometime." He offered.
That's crazy. I think I know
So
who you're talking about. That's crazy. Yeah, that's cool.
there's another question here from Marco who's asking who some of your favorite watercolor painters are. They specifically said
Yeah.
3 names. What you got?
Yeah. Okay. Let's go with three. I can write it in the chat myself. So Joseph Zbukvich is the one I mentioned earlier. He's kind of a watercolor god in a way. I'm not a I'm not a big fan of following too many people and being too, exposed to other people's art. I think that it does contaminate the well in a way. But I am at a point where I can, expose myself to art and enjoy it just as an enjoyer, and it won't seep into my paintings too badly, because that can happen.
Agreed.
But I think, Joseph Bukvich is one of the greats. There's an artist here on YouTube. I'm not sure what their name is. It's Misselbu, though, the channel. If people are unfamiliar with Misselbu, the best watercolor portraits I have ever seen. The best technical control. It's scary. It really is. And then I would say, it's hard to put this third spot. That's probably going to be me. Just because because it's impossible. I can throw like 20, 30 artists that I love. I'm gonna give you a curveball here.
Okay.
I don't even have to write it down. John Singer Sargent.
Oh yeah.
Go search his watercolors in particular. I like his watercolors better than his oils.
Interesting.
Just because I love watercolor. There is one with crocodiles or alligators. I can tell the difference. Amazing. I think if you just Google, John Singer Sargent, crocodile, alligator, watercolor, it's fantastic. And what I like most about it, he was an island. It looks like he barely had any influence by other painters, especially watercolorists, because watercolor back then was the thing you do before you do the final thing. So you kind of study the scene, or maybe you want to do something quick. It was even less appreciated. But his were probably always worth something. But the thing was, you can tell that it wasn't about technique for him. It was about his vision. So he would just paint things really in a free way, messy, but the end result is fantastic. And I actually have something to say about that watercolors. I'm just writing it in the chat. It's like gesture drawing. When you try and draw every little jagged edge of the line individually, you miss the gesture, right? When you're focused just on technique, on how I'm going to paint this, and you have a predetermined process, what very often happens is you miss the gesture. You miss the gesture of the whole thing. And once you have a bit of competency, you just let your vision lead you. Once you have a bit of a visual taste, if you're already proficient in one media, you can transfer this immediately to watercolor. Forget about techniques, forget about how-tos, forget about the plan, the process. Just let your vision guide you and look at what's going on paper. You won't miss the overall gesture of the thing and the line, so to speak. Your painting will end up perfect. That's a weird analogy I like doing between the two. Yeah.
Okay. No, yeah, I very much agree. I think that the hardest thing when someone starts asking questions is usually, what should I start learning first? Which medium is the best to learn first? So often they all just inform each other. It's really hard. Like, there's some core fundamentals that you should learn first, but after a certain bit, they just all start building on each other, and you can really tackle them from any angle.
You can learn a lot about one medium by using a different one. It's you can learn a lot. By the way, Marco says Sargent was good at everything: charcoal, oil, watercolor. What a god! I tend to agree.
Agreed. Anthony Damazin was asking if maybe you've seen a collection of Sargent's watercolors. Is that something that you've seen?
Good question. I haven't. Even when I saw his works in a museum, it was hard to come by the watercolors in particular. Yeah, it's one of those, you have to kind of do your research with Google Images. I don't think there's a specific book just on the watercolors. It's going to be online.
Yeah, I think mostly online is where I'm seeing anything. I don't think that there's like a book, even from some of the other more like, there's some companies that like Tashin that'll put something out that's like a hyper specific focus from certain artists. But I don't see one. But there's some things from MFA Boston that I posted here in this chat.
Cool. Yeah, I'm going to check it out too. By the way, I see a question from Drake Dementia Wilson. I love that. This is the best usernames here, really. He asks something interesting. I don't want to skip it. How do you practice watercolor, like for a beginner? I do draw.
Mm-hmm.
I think it has two aspects to it. One of them is, yes, there's very basic control you want to learn. Understanding how water and paint behave, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if you do this, what will happen? If you do that, what will happen? But you want to ultimately make this as intuitive as possible. So the way to do it is by exploration. If you follow the exercises I give you, it will lead you somewhere, but that's not the final destination. From there, it's about you exploring what happens when you do this, what happens when you do that, what happens when you paint the scene this way, when you try to paint it that way. That kind of self-drive to just test it out, I think that's the most important thing. I would say the more you experiment from the beginning, right from the start, not you build this experience and then you start to experiment. Right from the beginning, the more you do this, the faster you will become much, much better, and you will become your own artist. You won't be a copycat of anyone else. So yeah, that's an important thing, because people sometimes they just have no idea where to begin, and I get it. It's very hard sometimes to know where do I even begin. Yeah.
Yeah, well said. Well said. I guess, and like it seems like questions that kind of slowed down a little bit. I think let's sell them on why they need Liron's watercolor course.
Yeah, I would say that I'm kind of just scrolling to see if we haven't missed anything. I think the main thing is that the biggest problem people have with watercolor is the lack of freedom. And the problem is with watercolor in particular, you can see that immediately. With drier media, you can sort of get away with a never-ending process and with taking your time every step of the way. Now, I'm not saying watercolor has to be a rush to get somewhere, but some points are that, and that's fine. The overall process can be very relaxing, but some bits of it you have to strike while the iron is hot. So when you are lacking in your freedom, actually is one of the biggest detriments, because even if you gain somewhat of a decent control, you'll always be limited by your inability to just paint the thing as you want to paint it, as you see it. And I think what especially the frustration-free watercolor course does is it finds those levers, and it's levers probably in American. I went British here. It finds those levers, and it switches them on where there are some things you can do as practice almost. There are some things you can do while you're painting. And then there are some things you can do before you even begin the process. And I talk about all of these things, especially in the frustration-free watercolor course. I aim to solve that one problem with it. That's the thing I created it for. It was made for that. So especially if you feel like you're very stuck, if you look at a scene or something and you're overwhelmed by the details, you have no idea how you're going to paint them, and you find yourself lost in this small area and losing track of the whole thing, that's where you're going to really benefit from it. And as for the watercolor realism course, it's just a really deep dive into values, shapes, and edges. And edges are not discussed as often. And you can see here how important edges are to communicate. And if you're watching Proko, you know how edges are important to communicate your message. And I think by finding that freedom and by better understanding light, shadow, values, you can create something that is unique to you, that no one else has ever created. And I think the entry point to that is first and foremost that freedom. And a lot of people, they take freedom to an extreme and they say, okay, just be free, you don't need techniques. And people end up creating, I'm saying it cynically, rubbish, right? Like things that they themselves don't like, right? I think that's an important factor of that. If you ask them honestly, they're looking in the mirror. No one else is there to judge them. They don't like themselves, and they know is inadequate. That's where most people end up. That's the reality of it. But if you do strive for more, that's a possible pathway to that. And I think that freedom, it doesn't have to be woo-woo kind of, do whatever you want. It can be anchored in understandings, right? And understandings of the visuals, like why light and shadow behaves the way it does, and an understanding of your medium of choice. In this case, it's watercolor. And the more you build that understanding, the results will come, the style will come, you'll be super unique. You'll be the only person who paints the way you do. So I think it's an urgent matter that you embark upon that path if you actually want to get somewhere. I'm serious. I've felt that from the beginning. I wanted to crack this thing, and I still do. There's a lot of mysteries to me still that I don't understand, and it's always giving you hints of the things you don't understand yet. So yeah,
you don't know what you don't know.
Yes. Yes.
There's one other question from Drake.
Yes.
I'm wondering if you cover this in the course or just want to talk about it quickly.
Yeah, like
they're asking, how about workspace, like cleanup, setup, and such? Like it's wet, so I can't paint on a desk with a computer. How do you clean brushes and etc.?
Yeah. So in the beginning, everything feels like it has to be quite sterile. I will admit. As time goes on, like my Mac here is full of paint stains, and and I have I have a PC and a Mac. The PC is right here on the table, and I'm spraying water all over. It doesn't really have to be. The process isn't that messy. Usually, what happens is when you put down a wash, when you kind of do the motion with the brush, it sprays a bit of water. It's not a big deal. I just love this cutting mat. That's the thing I use for everything, and it's super valuable. So I can do whatever I want with it. I cut my paper on it. I do a lot of things with this. I would say that's the biggest thing. If you have a dedicated space, having this kind of a thing is great. But yeah, you may want to keep your electronics at a bit of a distance. For reference photos, you can always print if you're okay with that, especially if you're just getting started, you're doing a lot of black and white studies, you just print it out and then, the paper, and you don't need a computer, you don't need a screen. I will say also that when you print something, for some, it's easier than looking at a screen. It's easier to see the shapes, the values. It's just in front of you here. Both are physical in front of you. So that's a good way of not having a screen, but sometimes it's convenient to have an iPad or something small that you can put in front of you as you paint, just to use for references. So yeah, I would say that watercolor is, generally speaking, easy to clean. Some of my huge paintings I couldn't do here. I had to do in the living room, on the dining table. It's relatively easy to clean. Some are more staining than others, but if you catch it early, it's very easy to clean. And you can bring some kind of a surface there with you, but I'm not too worried about that anymore. I used to be, not really anymore. Yeah.
Like you said, it's probably about the idea of, like everything else, the experimentation and experience with time. You learn what you can and can't work with.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. And start, careful, you don't have to. I had a time where I would really place I have a board sometimes I place the painting on. I would just place the board on my Mac, and it's okay. You can see it even in the videos. It's not a big deal. But yeah, you'll have to kind of play around with it and see what works for you.
But don't try to mix your paints with it or anything. It's fine.
Yeah, definitely.
The Mac is mostly waterproof.
A lot of people who do plein air, they tend to mix their drink with their water cup for mixing. Yeah. And I've seen that happen many times. Someone reaching to the cup for mixing instead of their beer.
Yeah.
Which is,
do yourself a favor. Try to keep a clear thing for where your actual drink is. So if you can see through it, you'll know.
Yeah, and I'll definitely say, pets, children, you do want to keep this stuff away from them, because especially cats, we don't have a cat here, but cats just, they climb on everything. So that's where you really have to be careful. especially with the water buckets, stuff like that. I've heard a lot, and thankfully the cat's okay, but it happens. Cats just they jump up and they lick it, and it doesn't look really. I don't know. To me, that's not lickable. So
no, I know that this is appetizing. I know what you're talking about. It's a nice thick soup
for sure.
if I open, like, you go to a restaurant and you go get like pozole or something, or menudo, and it's like that's what you get instead, seems great. It's fine. There was one other question that we've addressed a couple times. You see the one from Danny there?
Yeah, when you layer to go light to dark shades or dark to light. Yeah, I'm a big fan of doing both. I have no problems to paint the darks first and then come back with the lights. What you'll find is it's something people are worried about when they hear about the whole light to dark thing. If you have something dark, can you paint light over it? And yes, you can. If you're just careful and gentle, let's say, you can do this and add like a surface underneath, like a desk or whatever. And you see, I touched it, but nothing really happened. It's okay. I'm a big fan of sometimes defining the darks. You can totally do that. So let's say I define the darks here. We'll do the same Apple thing. Wait, so if the light comes through, this is a shadow. Yeah, this is a shadow. And then you can come back even with almost clean water and just help it move. Even after a couple of moments, you can do that. You don't have to do it immediately. So yeah, you can work whatever order you like and enjoy. Not a problem at all, from my experience. Yeah. I think the real answer to this question is what motivates you and what inspires you. It's like, a common question is, how do you know where to start a painting? Like, do I start here, there? I just go with the thing that I feel like starting with. Like here it was the forehead, here it was the top. Practically speaking, watercolor flows, so you sometimes will start top to bottom, but not always. I like to challenge that. If something fascinates me, I'll start with that and kind of work my way outside. Sometimes I like to keep the focal point like the best for last. Sometimes I like to start with the focal point and let the rest kind of be painted later on.
Yeah, I like it. It can vary. Which actually, if you, Danny, if it sounds like maybe you came in a little bit later, if you go back and watch this one as a replay or just scrub back to the beginning of it, you'll see you kind of basically did dark to light and then light to dark for each of these pieces. Like, you have that variance between these two.
It was a mix. Both of these were a mix. By the way, when I talk about things that, I mentioned this way earlier, I think that's like an accident happens, but then it works to your favor. Like, this is one thing I like here. For example, the pattern I was using was kind of starting from yellow and then kind of neutralizing and going to dark. I actually really like this butt cheek, I guess. It's the reflected light is warm, but you can see a clear core shadow. I like that a lot. And then there's a bit of blue here. So very often I also tell beginners, if you really don't like what you paint, usually you can find something you like about it. Some area that kind of worked out, something that looks nice. I really like that here. It's a little rough, kind of, you can see the paper's texture, even though it's a smooth transition. You can always find spots that you enjoy in your art and kind of say, oh, okay, this worked out really nicely. Let's see how I can recreate something like that next. That's the exploration bit.
I guess, I don't know, is there anything else that you want to discuss or talk about for the people who are here right now?
I think I just want to thank everyone. They're super kind, and I see some really kind comments in the chat. Thank you, Esteban. Thank you, Sanctity Johnson. Thank you, everyone. Yeah, I really appreciate it. Thank you, Danny, too, for being here. I'm good. I think we covered everything. Because it was 2 streams, we've talked at length. There's a lot to explore in watercolor. There's a lot. Every year, I'm like, okay, I look at old work and new work, and I'm like, okay, there was a lot more to discover. There was a lot more to grow. There's always interesting discoveries, and I would say you just keep exploring and you find it. And
Yeah, absolutely. Just as a reminder for anyone who's here and hasn't already heard this, Liron's course is available on Proko for 20% off right now. Pretty much everything on the website is 20% off. That's courses, brush packs, model reference packs, Whatever thing that you're looking for that we have that you've been eyeing for a long time,
Now's
it's on
the
sale
time.
right now. Yeah. This is the deepest discount that we offer besides when something is on brand new pre-sale. But we don't have any courses on pre-sale right now, so come and get it.
Yeah, and you don't have to look at it as like a New Year resolution thing. Take your time, just find what you like and enjoy, and that's it. Just I don't paint anything that I don't care about. If you don't like a subject, don't paint it. I think that's the key to actually continuing with because you want people to watch the course, actually learn from it, and continue developing. So yeah, no need to put unnecessary pressure on yourself. Just get through it and find the things you enjoy painting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, who better to hear about this from than the teacher himself? So, thank you guys all for being here. We're going to have more live streams the rest of this week and then next week as well. But if you just already need more live stream right now, we already have a whole separate one that we did with Liron recently that you can find that's just already available for you to replay for yourself. Go get it. But in the meantime, have a good rest of your day, everyone. Thanks for